you're in LA, but
yeah,
Coach Neil Melanson from Alliance drives up from San Diego to LA to train with you. How many days a week is he up there training with you?
Almost every week he's here about 2 to 3 days.
And he's got his Alliance group down there. He's got guys getting ready for fights. Does he bring some of those guys up with him as well to get ready, or is it there are not enough heavyweights down there, or big enough guys to roll with you?
Yeah, we bring. There's a guy that came up with him a couple times. Jordan Johnson, right?
Oh,
Johnson.
Nice.
Jordan Johnson came up and a couple times, and it was an extra body. And then we brought Rafael Butler in for a good body for sparring and just an overall big boy. He's like 280.
So let's talk about Andrei Arlovski. I mean, obviously he had a great storied career when he first started. Kind of fell off. Tim Sylvia basically was the guy that dethroned him a little bit and kind of sent him packing. He's been around. He's been kind of all over, between affliction fights and some other fights. And then he's back in the UFC. Loses to Verdum, has that weird decision loss, but he beat Barnett before that, of course. He beat Gonzaga, beat Overeem. So he's kind of had a pretty decent run since he's been back in the UFC. But for some reason, people still aren't really sold on him being back to full form. Do you see?
Did he beat Gonzaga and Overeem and stuff, or are you talking about me?
Yeah, he beat Barnett, he beat Overeem, he beat Gonzaga, lost to Antonio Silva. Hold on, I'm sorry, I got yours up.
Yeah, that's
mine.
I
got your stats up. So I'm looking at what the hell?
Your father. Just like your father.
So he's got the Anthony Johnson win in World Series of Fighting, and he's got Kyle. Yeah. He's got Andreas he beat, and then Schwab he beats when he comes in, but. We've all seen Brennan fight lately. He needs to pick a different career at this point than fighting. And then he beats Antonio Silva. But people aren't sold on him still being like back to full form. And he's having he's in one of those situations like, yeah, I'm back to where I was. Like I feel better. He's giving the same verbiage that every guy gives before a fight. Are you buying into this verbiage? Do you see him still as like kind of? I don't want to say this as like disparagingly, but he's kind of an old broken down man.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say that. What I would say, though, is that the sport has jumped leaps and bounds since he was the champion. The athletes that are involved in the UFC nowadays are different than back then. And you can't deny that. Andre is still a very dangerous individual. He was my training partner for 3 years over there at Jackson's, and him and I would go at it. We'd go rounds, and I wouldn't necessarily call him an old broken down man, you know what I mean? He's definitely got some juice left in there, and I've been everywhere with him. I've cornered him. I've trained with him. I've done all that kind of stuff, and his fight with Anthony Johnson actually, man, that made me a believer in him, because in that fight he broke his jaw in the first round, and he continued the last 2 rounds with a broken jaw. And that was some strength that I saw in him that I hadn't seen in anybody before, firsthand, sitting there in his corner. I mean, I picked up his tooth off the mat, that fell out. So, I have a lot of respect for the guy, man. And I know that he's coming back from, just kind of being off the radar a little bit, but, man, he's a warrior through and through.
Does the 3 years of you guys train together, is that going to help or hurt you during the fight? Someone having that much knowledge and understanding of how your ups and downs, because you weren't training for each other at the time. You trained for other guys, but he still sees you and see how you operate.
Yeah. So I don't think I wouldn't look at it as far as him knowing what I'm going to do or what I'm not going to do, or me knowing what he's going to do, what he's not going to do. What I would focus on is the relationship that him and I have built over the 3 years. And at this point, we're like brothers. Like if you put 2 brothers in a cage, I don't want to lose to him. I don't want him to have bragging rights for the rest of our life. You know what I mean? Just like he doesn't want me to have bragging rights, and he's not going to want me to poke him in the ribs, at a chance that I get to kind of, jab him a little bit, make fun of him a little bit, and vice versa, I mean, I know how he is, and I know how serious he can be, but then at the same time, we know that how each other joke around and poke fun and mess around with each other, and so that's definitely something, I want bragging rights. So you're going to see that come May 23rd. I don't want to lose to him, just like he doesn't want to lose to me. So it's not going to be a pitter-patter kind of, let's play patty cake kind of fight and to squeak out a win. I'm going to try to go in there and finish him. That way I can have bragging rights.
Is your relationship with him going to survive the fight, no matter who wins?
Oh, yeah. Definitely. I mean, that's something that he even brought up to me before he came back in the UFC. He's like, he asked me one time, he's like, hey, what do you think about, if we fight each other? I said, man, if it gets to that point, I said, we fight each other for free in the gym almost every day. I said, all the only difference it's going to make is that we're going to get paid for it now. And, I have a lot of respect for Andrei, and Andrei isn't a man that I would ever, I never want to lose in general. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I'm going to go in here and be like okay with losing, because I'm a sore freaking loser, and I deserve to be. I work my ass off. I bleed and I cry with this kind of stuff, and I deserve to be a sore loser if I ever lose. But having respect for the man that you're going against is a different feeling than if you legitimately don't like the person. You don't like who they are. You don't like what they stand for, And I respect Andrei with everything that I have. At the same time, that's not going to stop me from going in there and doing my job.
Right.
But I do respect them and have that for them.
Well, you've explained it differently, these type of matchups, than anybody else that I've interviewed or heard talking in their interviews have. That you're like, look, it's like two brothers fighting. Like no brother's going to want to lose to his brother. Like they're always going to go out and fight. You see two brothers fighting, they're going to go crazy. Like you're going to try and do whatever you can and pull out all the stops to make sure that you win. Really under any circumstances necessary. Like you're going to make sure that you're the victor because you don't want your brother having the bragging right, like you said. But does that come to
unless you're Neil's older brother, then you don't want to be, then you don't want to be Neil.
Yeah, at all, ever. You don't have anything to do with it. So is that coming to a problem where you're like, the only way to finish Andrei now is because I've got this armbar on. I'm gonna have to. He's not gonna tap to me, so I'm gonna have to break his arm. Or same thing for you. He's gonna be like, I don't want to be able to finish Travis because I have him in his armbar. I'm gonna have to break his arm to get him to stop because he's not gonna stop. Are we gonna see that kind of situation? And are you guys both willing to jump through that hoop and go, look, I have to do serious damage to my brother to stop this thing?
Yeah, that's our job. That's what we signed up for. We signed on the dotted line, and I would get mad at him if he had me in the arm bar and I wasn't tapping and he let go of the arm bar or switched to something else. If he had a chance to break my arm, he better freaking break it. You know what I mean? Because if I'm going to be that stubborn to not tap, if I'm going to be, just same way if I was in a choke. If I'm in a choke and he hears me gurgling, he better not ease up so that I don't pass out. You better put me to sleep, big fella, because I'm going to get up. And if you let me out, I'm going to get up and try to knock you out. You know what I mean? And vice versa. I know that he'd be upset with me if I didn't go in there and give him everything that I have. I've trained my butt off for this fight. I know that he has. I know what kind of pride he carries, just as well as he knows how much pride I carry. So we're going in there as opponents, but we are like brothers. We're like friends, and he expects the best out of me, just like I expect the best out of him.
Speaking of dotted line, you mentioned both you guys signed a dotted line for these fights. The new Reebok deal is getting ready to get started. This is your 12th fight. So when you fight, again, not this fight coming up, but after that will be your 13th fight in the UFC. So you're at the topper end of the new Reebok pay scale. Does that pay scale help or hurt you with your overall sponsorship program? When you go in now, you only have X amount of money coming in. That's all you're going to get, but it's going to be there. There's no hunting for sponsors, but does it cut back on some of the money that you could have gotten?
Yeah, so that for me, that's kind of a two-part question, and I have to be able to explain myself, and I'll have to explain myself in the media, if I'm asked that in like a media scrum or something like that. And the way I say it is, just by the Reebok numbers, I would be taking a pay cut. But at the same time, I'm a smart enough man to have the management around me, to work, to have deals in place, to have the opportunities in place where I don't solely depend on in-the-cage sponsorships. I have outside-the-cage sponsorships that I have been a part of, and this is where it benefits And these young guys need to understand that when you get a good company behind you that sticks with you through thick and thin, you better bend over backwards to keep them. You better go do the free appearances that they don't even ask you to do. You better go and make yourself available to these companies. That way, when the tough gets going, they'll stick through you. And this is one of those times. You know, I have companies like Muscle Farm. I have companies like Mate Fit Tea. I have companies, you know, other companies that we've had throughout almost my entire career that are keeping me on because I've been loyal to them, because I branded myself with that company, and I've made myself available to them whenever they've needed me. And I don't jump around. I don't just, you know, look like a billboard and hop around this and that to whoever's going to pick me the most. You know, it's about the loyalty that I've had towards them is the same way they've had towards me. And so that's what's helped me pay off. You know, and that's why something like this happens. You get guys freaking out, tweeting this and that about how the UFC is screwing them, how Reebok is screwing them. Well, guys, you just screwed yourself because you need to go get yourself a good manager, somebody who sticks up for you, and also be that guy that's loyal. You know what I mean? Don't be that jackass that jumps around from company to company just to make an extra buck or two. You know, and that's what a lot of these guys do. And those are the guys that I see complaining.
Yep.
You know what I mean? I have no problem with this deal because I have companies behind me that will stick with me.
I talked to Josh Berkman, and he was saying how he explained it was the exact same way that you explained it, with a little different twist. The time that I don't have to spend now hunting for in-the-cage sponsors is completely reduced. So that money for me, because he's like you, he's almost at 12 fights. This next fight of his will be his 12th fight. So when the Reebok deal comes into factor, it'll be his 13th fight, so he's at the upper tier. It was a huge pay cut for him. But the headache of trying to find sponsors that can actually sponsor him in the cage is worth all that money going out the door. The majority of his sponsors, like you, are ones that couldn't be in the cage anyway. They couldn't pay the UFC fee to be in the cage to begin with, so he had to do other stuff anyway. He had to go do appearances and motivational speaking and things. And so he's on the same boat that you are. And these are two you know, you're really talking about it in the sport of MMA. At 20 fights, you're kind of new. You're still kind of new. The majority of fights have been in the UFC, so people know you very well. With a guy like Berkman who's like at 50 fights or something, where less than half of his fights have been in the UFC, you're like, wow, this is a veteran, and you are saying the same thing. Did your management put you in this direction long ago, or was it something that you were like, look, I want to stay loyal to the guy that was taking care of me when I was an amateur?
Yes. So that's to get the championship pay, which is what, 40 grand a fight,
yeah,
right?
It's 40 grand a fight. Yep.
Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah, 40 grand a fight, something like that. I would still be taking a huge pay cut. That's probably not even half of what I would get in sponsorships for a fight. And let me tell you, by, you know, that's what I mean. That's my management, VFB marketing group. We do more than just in the cage stuff. You know what I mean? We take these companies and we use the platform that the UFC gives us to market, but we go beyond that as well. And that's where a lot of, again, you know, you can pay Anderson Silva 50 grand to be on his shorts, 100 grand to be on his shorts in the 25-minute fight. It's not going to do shit for your company. All you did was spend $100,000 to maybe get a couple extra hits on what? You know what I mean? Or a lot of these guys do it just to be cool. What we do is we go after companies that really could use help in marketing. You know what I mean? And that's what we do. We use part of my image. You know what I mean? We don't just use, you know, in the cage UFC stuff. It's like the image that we've created over time is how we help produce, you know, with these other companies.
That's a smart idea, and this is the way the sport's moving. It's the way it's going to be moving forward. Right now, Bellator obviously has the bigger game because they're letting you can do whatever you want to with sponsorship-wise. But the reality of it is, when it comes down to it, it's going to be the promotion's going to control what sponsors you have on your body inside the cage or ring, and then you're going to have to figure out what you're going to do outside the cage or ring to make extra income, and you're ahead of the curve. That's just ahead of the curve.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing about getting with a smart management group, with a smart marketing group. If you start thinking about, look at the big picture. Where does the UFC? Where would they love to be? We'd love to be in the same realm as NFL, NBA, MLB. Well, I'll tell you what. None of those players get paid to wear those jerseys. You know what I mean?
Well,
None of
yes,
those players
yes
get paid
and no.
for those jerseys.
You know, yes and no. That's their uniform. That's their uniform. That's their team uniform. That's going to wear. So yeah, I get that. But also too that the nature of the sport, NFL, Major League Baseball, even soccer. If you look at soccer jerseys, they sometimes have like 3 or 4 hits on them. Those guys have to wear that uniform. But the nature, the society of that sport was always that way. It's been that way for as long as it started. We're having the problem as fighters because that's not the way we started. It's been changed in our era. It's been changed now. So it's happening for us. We're having problems with it because it got switched on us. We're going to be like NFL. We're going to be like hockey. We're going to be like MLB where we have to wear the uniform of the promotion. That's what Reebok is for the UFC.
But I'll tell you, though, the thing is about those sports is that they're so highly regulated that, you know what I mean, that they're so far, like we were just saying, is they're ahead of the curve. You know what I mean? They were ahead of the curve before they even got started with doing that kind of stuff. Having those uniform, rules implied already. For us, it's like we've been allowed to just do whatever we wanted to do pretty much. The UFC was the first company to really enforce a tax at first, just a tax for these companies to want to be a part of what they are growing and to be a part of that sport. Now we're bringing on a big group like Reebok to uniform the entire look so that we go more mainstream. And I understand, companies like Reebok, companies, or like the NFL, where they have Reebok, Nike, Adidas, they have, Budweiser, Corona, Coors, all the different this and that are sponsoring them. Eventually it trickles down to the players. We're just not there yet. You know what I mean? And that's why it's important to have that management group that is looking in the future for you and has your back. You know what I mean? My management company invested in me in the beginning. They didn't just come in and start making money off of me. They invested hundreds of thousands of dollars into me to get me to this point where now we're starting to turn a profit as a company, based off of the chosen guys that we have.
I got to go back for a second. I disagree with you. We were talking about where it trickles down in the NFL, like Budweiser sponsors and, Coors Light sponsor, whoever sponsors the team. Each individual team could either have Reebok or Nike or Adidas. Like they can switch stuff out, whatever. And that's up to the individual team, their individual owners. And it trickles down to the players, which it does. And you're saying that the UFC is just not there yet. And I call bullshit. I think we're going to wait and come around September or August. The deal starts in July. We're going to come around September or August. We'll talk to like 2 or 3 or 4 different fight groups. Guys have gone and fought on different fight nights and fought on different pay-per-views. And we're going to go, hey, you were bitching about only getting $2,500 because you're a female strawweight. There's only been 4 fights in the entire history of the UFC. So you're the lower half of it. Are you happy with this Reebok deal? Yes, I'm very happy with the Reebok deal. Well, hold on a second. 2 months ago, you were bitching. Why are you happy? I'm very happy with the Reebok deal. Because everyone knows UFC likes giving out locker room bonuses. And if a guy like Travis Browne, who's faithful and loyal and understands where they're going right now, you might be getting $10,000, in your deal when it starts, your next fight. But I guarantee you're going to get Dana walking in and go, you know what, Travis? Thanks so much. Boom, here's your locker room bonus. And it's going to be like, well, fuck, I was making 100 or I was making 80. Now I just made 100 on this Reebok deal. Just to keep my mouth shut and understanding the vision of the business. Do you try to tell younger guys that I know a lot of guys kind of look up to you, especially heavyweights kind of look up to you because you're approachable and you're nice. You're not like some heavyweights and some fighters in general are kind of like standoffish. Yeah. Do you try to tell them like, look, you got to understand business, not only entertainment, but you got to understand the money side of business too and what people are doing?
Very much so. I mean, unfortunately, that's the way it goes. You know what I mean? Listen, there's very few and few and far between in this fighter era that we can have people that stand out and do whatever the hell they want to do. Like a John Jones, he can do whatever the hell he wants to do, and he will always continue to make money. Look at the trouble that he's in now, and I can promise you within a year and a half, 2 years, he's going to be right back at the top. You know what I mean? And that's the thing. There's very few and far between as far as like people being able to just go and say and do whatever they want to do. Eventually, you just have to understand that, this is a company. This company wants to make money. How can they make money off of you? You chose to be the athlete. You chose to kind of be the meat in this situation. You're the one that they're selling. So you have to be okay with that. Once you understand your place and you're able to maximize that, I feel like these guys are be able to be a lot happier. I ate shit sandwiches in the beginning of my career for 2 years. You know what I mean? I got iced out on, you know what I mean? Where it was just like, you know, I wasn't making anything. But at the same time, you know, I came out when I got my opportunity, I made the best of it. And, you know, I never talk bad about the company that I work for. And this is how we build. You know what I mean? You have to do it. And are you, you know, some people, oh, you're just being a this or that, or, you know, you're just trying to play for the crowd. But at the end of the day, you kind of have to. And at the same time, while I'm talking to you, I'm going to get my charger before I die. But keep going.
So you talked about, you know, having someone invest in you and your management team investing in you and spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, and just now finally getting that all back. You know, they didn't have that ability before now. How many fights was it before your management company or you kind of figured out, like, hey, we're even now? Like, what fight was that for you where you're like, okay, we're even now, and all the money that I've invested, all the money that they've invested, we're now at an even point? How many fights ago was that?
You know, I have an interesting story with my management. For the first, I would say probably for the first almost 2 years of my career, that I really needed them to support me. And I went into debt. They literally came out of pocket, I would say up to about 80 grand. Oh, wow. 80 grand, 80 to almost 100 grand, where, you know, where it was like I needed help paying my bills. You know, I have 2 kids and all that kind of stuff. And so they helped me. They believed in me. And it wasn't until, you know, when I fought Stefan Struve, I got a big bonus, and I paid a majority of that back. Well, after Stefan Struve, I fought Rob Broughton after that in September. I didn't fight again until the following April. And making the money that I was making at the time, which was, I think 10-10 or 12-12, you know, that's not very much to make. And you have to pay taxes, you have to pay coaches, you have to pay all that kind of stuff. So, you know, they continued to support me until I fought Chad Griggs, and I made another bonus on that fight. And then we started getting the ball rolling, and I would say probably about mid-2012 is when I had it all paid back, and I'm in the, what would you call it, in the black now? Yeah, I'm not in the red anymore. I'm in the black, and since then I've been there. And,
you know, so that's the Chad Griggs fight, which is April of 2012, and then you lose Antonio Silva October of 2012. But basically you're talking about right in that time frame, sometime in there, that you're at the even stage and you're moving forward. And that's huge, because I can tell you this, in my 30 or so fights professionally, I've never been out of debt. Like, I'm still in debt from fighting, and I retired 4 years ago. Like, I'm still have that debt load that I'm trying to deal with, because we never had that management company. Talk to the guys down at Johnny Hendricks' Team Takedown. Same thing with them. They take care of their fighters, and they have to pay them back as they start making some money. They're only now getting even because Johnny won the title for a second. Like, it was, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's a lot of money being put out, a lot of things. Is that going to be the wave of most managements? Because there's going to be stories like between you and Johnny Hendricks, and of course your stories are because they're going to start becoming more and more stories. Is that the wave of these new managers that want to come to this sport? They want to jump on board with the sport and go, well, if you want to do it and you want to get somebody good, you have to start them with nothing, and you have to pay for everything until they can start making some money. Is that the new game?
You know, I think I think the best way to, if you look into it, look into our past as a culture, you can look into boxing, where a lot of these guys, these promoters, will go into these gyms and say, hey, I want to sign you. I'll pay for this, I'll pay for that, but I need you to do this. And you know what that does, and it's good for a fighter to a certain extent, is it keeps them accountable.
Yeah.
When you have accountability, you have somebody that you answer to. And if somebody is paying your bills, if there's somebody that is looking out for you like that, you now have to answer to somebody. And I think that's what a lot of these young guys don't have, is accountability. And so, you know, when you're able to make your own money, you don't have to answer to anybody. You're just kind of doing whatever you want to do. You know, a lot of these guys just, they end up falling off because they don't take care of themselves. They don't know how, and they don't have, when they wake up in the morning, they don't have to go to training. They don't have to go do this. They don't have to go do that. They have nobody to answer to. So then they start to slowly fizzle out. I got lucky, man. My management's a great management. The coaches I have around me are great coaches. The people that I have around me in my life are good people. They're not yes men, which is the most important thing in my life. You know, my buddy Josh Barton, who he is not afraid to call me out. And I've mentioned his names in numerous interviews and all this kind of stuff, but he is not scared to call me out and tell me that I'm effing up. You know, he'll pull me aside and be like, hey, buddy, I'm really concerned about you right now. I don't think you should be doing this. I think you should be doing that. And then it's like, you know, it's my job to listen. You know what I mean? But I'm also not going to listen to every clown that I have in my life trying to tell me which direction to go. But I have very few people in my life that I'll listen to, and they have a good head on their shoulders, and that's also important.
You know, Travis, you and I can talk about this stuff forever, so I want to we'll end it here. It's an interesting topic, and it's refreshing to hear it from somebody like I said that is still kind of in that middle zone. You know, with 20 fights, you still have a long way to go. You know, you have a lot more fights left in you, and be this mature about how the business is actually run and the direction of what the biggest promotion in our industry is going to, and the reasons why they're doing it. It's very refreshing to see a guy be able to stand up and go, look, this is the reason why we're doing it, and here's my place with the organization, and I'm going to make the most of my place, and within a year, my place will be a different place, and I'll just keep making the most of that and keep growing. So it's nice to see.
Yeah, man, and some people, like I said, some people think that you're almost like selling out. But it's like, listen, man, you ain't paying my bills. You ain't taking care of me. And what I'm doing is being true to myself and being true to my sport. Do you see me going out there and throwing fights? No. You'll always get the best fight out of me possible. So there's no way people can tell me, you know, like, oh, you're for the big companies, you're for this and for that. And it's like, yeah, they're the ones that are paying the money. You know what I mean? Like, if you're smart about it, you'll be there. You'll be there when the opportunity hits. Just like any fight, you know. I had an opportunity to fight Alistair Overeem. I made the best out of that. I had an opportunity to fight Josh Barnett. I made the best out of that. And I'll tell you right now, without the UFC, I never would have had the chance to fight those guys. And nobody would know who Travis Browne is.
Hey, if more guys sold out earlier, they'd be making a lot more money, that's for sure. And I'm one of those guys included. If I'd sold out earlier, I would have been making a lot more money, even with my losses to Hughes. They would have took care of me in post-retirement. They would have took care of me when I moved on. And because I wasn't loyal, they weren't loyal either. And that's how big businesses work. They're going to take care of you when you retire. And that's because that's how they operate. That's what they think of you. So it's one of those deals.
Sir.
Travis, thanks so much for coming on. I appreciate it. Way over the time limit. We always end up talking way too long, but thanks for coming on.
No worries. Here, I'll let you say bye.
Bye, Neil.
I'll be in Vegas Tuesday.
I'm here Tuesday. I'll be here. Hit me up.
All right.